Xiao Yun Hang shook his head lightly, the smile in his eyes deepening. Besides, I am your husband. With effortless ease, he pulled the stubbornly resisting me, quilt, and all, to his arms. Alright, stop wrapping yourself, so tightly you can't breathe. Tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, with movements so gentle it was unbelievable. He leaned down close to my... Those usually bottomless black eyes now reflected the warm candor in my small, panicked figure. Don't worry. You're still young. He looked straight into my eyes, emphasizing each word solemnly, as if issuing an imperial decree. Until you willingly consent, I will absolutely not touch you. I was stunned. He seemed to have completed some major task, and breathed a sigh of relief. His familiar breath and familiar embrace were the same, as they had been for 7 years, yet somehow, no longer quite the same. Just as I completely relaxed, intending to fall asleep in his arms, his teasing voice, with a lazy smile came to my ear. But don't squirm around too much, or don't blame me for breaking my promise. The morning after the wedding, right in front of the wedding matron, he didn't even blink, as he picked up a silver needle, and pricked his own fingertip. A drop of fresh red blood fell precisely onto the pure white silk sheet, instantly blooming into a vivid red plum blossom. The matron's face lit up with joy as she showered us with auspicious blessings. The Emperor and Empress are in perfect harmony, their union as strong as metal and stone. My face, however, burned bright red, from my cheeks all the way to my ears, hot enough to fry an egg. This wasn't exactly the dropping red from those storybooks. After handling the formalities, Xiao Yun Hang turned his head leisurely and looked at me. The corner of his mouth curled into a mischievous, teasing smile. The little General Shen, who used to climb trees to steal bird eggs, and wade in rivers to catch fish and shrimp, has finally grown up and learned what shyness is. The more he spoke, the more mortified I became. You're talking nonsense. I grabbed a pillow and hurled it at him, and scrambled in a panic into the inner chamber, not daring to look at him again. According to palace rules, 3 days after the imperial wedding, unless there was a special decree, the empress was to move back to her own Phoenix Rest Palace to demonstrate her dignity as the mistress of the 6 palaces. I considered myself an adult now, and couldn't continue being as clueless as before. So that very night, I took the initiative and sensibly returned to Phoenix Rest Palace. Palace was still the same palace, magnificent and fully equipped. Yet for some reason, lying on that bed, that once felt terrifyingly large, I tossed and turned, and simply couldn't fall asleep. My heart felt empty. My ears missed the sound of his steady, gentle breathing and the rustle of pages turning. The tip of my nose no longer caught the familiar scent of ink mixed with sandalwood. The scent that could calm my heart. Even the quilt felt colder and stiffer than the one in Qian Qing Palace. It was so empty and quiet. I curled up into a ball and muttered softly, "Why am I still not used to sleeping alone like this?" The words had barely left my mouth when, bang, a loud crash sounded. The heavy doors of the sleeping chamber were violently kicked open from outside, slamming hard against the wall. I jumped in fright and sat up immediately. There stood Xiao Yun Hang in a long robe, his long hair tied neatly, his face dark as a storm cloud, carrying the icy chill of wind and snow. He stood at the doorway, his eyes looking like they wanted to devour me alive. He walked in slowly, each step feeling like it landed on my heart. His voice was so cold it could form ice shards. "What are you doing here?" I was stunned by his appearance, and answered instinctively, "I'm sleeping." He walked to the bed, let out a cold laugh, and without any warning, roughly yanked off my quilt, grabbed my wrist, and dragged me off the bed. His grip was so strong I felt like my wrist bones would shatter. "Shen Luo Yi, when did you grow the guts to do this? You've learned how to sleep by yourself now?" He practically growled through gritted teeth. "Who gave you the courage?" I was completely dazed, and looked at him stupidly. Wasn't I just following the rules? Why was he so furious? But he gave me no chance to think. He directly scooped me up, and turned to stride outside. "From today onward, you will obediently stay in Qian Qing Palace for me." As he walked, he glared at me with fiery eyes, his tone domineering and allowing no objection. "Our sleeping chamber is your home. Understood?" I was held securely in his arms, feeling his chest heaving with rage and his arms as strong as iron clamps. My mind was a mess, but somehow I obediently nodded. He carried me with long strides back to our familiar bed, carefully wrapped me tightly in the quilt like a cocoon, then lay down beside me. He still seemed quite angry. In the pitch-black darkness, I could tell he hadn't calmed down yet. Resentfully turning toward me, the culprit, he lowered his voice and cursed, "You foolish little blockhead of a girl. The moment we sank to the bottom of the lake, our ankles tightly wrapped by cold seaweed, piercing through the murky blue water. The last thing we saw was the underside of a lotus leaf. The interwoven veins on it, like a desperate map leading to the underworld. The origin of this incident was simply because a pair of legendary golden koi had been delivered to Tai Lake in the Imperial Garden. Whoever saw them would have good fortune. Your Majesty, please don't climb in any further. Little palace maid Shui'er stood on the shore, stomping her feet anxiously. His Majesty specially warned that the water deep among the lotus leaves is very dangerous. You're not allowed to go near it. I turned my head and made a funny face at her. I paddled the small boat even harder. What's there to be afraid of? Back when my father hadn't entered officialdom yet, I used to climb the tallest tree behind our house to steal bird eggs. What can a tiny boat and a few fish do to me? The words had barely left my mouth when a green frog jumped out of nowhere from a large lotus leaf and landed smack on my face with a loud croak. I screamed in fright and instinctively leaned back hard. The shallow boat lost balance in an instant. With a splash, I flipped over and fell into the water, freezing cold, suffocating, and filled with despair. Just as I thought I would become the first empress in history to drown, a bright yellow figure tore through the water, without hesitation, swimming toward me like a dragon entering the sea. When I woke up, I was lying on the warm bed in Qian Qing Palace. I had been changed into dry sleeping clothes, and the fireplace is burning earth dragons inside, filling the room with cozy warmth. Yet my heart was filled with ice and snow. I grabbed the hand of the maid beside me, my voice trembling. His Majesty, he isn't angry, is he? Shui'er's eyes were red and swollen. Hearing this, her tears fell even harder. Her Majesty, His Majesty, he personally jumped into the water and carried you out. I've never seen His Majesty like that before. His face was terrifyingly pale. My heart sank straight to the bottom. Xiao Yun Hang was sitting by the window not far away, holding a teacup and slowly skimming the foam off the surface. He wasn't wearing his dragon robe, only a simple yellow robe. It accentuated his unparalleled handsome face, and made him look even colder. He was right there, yet he felt 1,000 miles away. The atmosphere in the chamber was so low it was hard to breathe. He didn't say a word, or even look at me, just sat there silently. This was 100 times more terrifying than if he had scolded me directly. I couldn't endure it any longer. I didn't even put on my shoes, and ran barefoot to him, grabbed his robe hem, and dropped all my pride and pretense. Big brother Yun Hang. The moment I spoke, my voice broke into sobs. Tears poured down uncontrollably. This servant was wrong. Luo Yi really knows her mistake. Your Majesty, please don't ignore me. Please don't stay silent. I'm so scared. Finally, he reacted. Those bottomless eyes slowly lifted and landed on me. There was no longer the usual doting, only a cold fear that made my heart clench. After a long time, he sighed and lightly knocked on my head, his knuckle. Shen Luo Yi, when will you stop making me worry? His voice was low and hoarse, carrying exhaustion. I knew the crisis had passed. I immediately pressed forward, putting his arm, wiping my tears, while making excuses. It was all because of that frog. If it hadn't suddenly jumped on my face, I wouldn't have fallen into the lake. Before I finished speaking, I felt the arm I was hugging suddenly stiffen. I looked up, and met Xiao Yun Hang's narrowed, dangerous eyes. The gentleness on his handsome face a moment ago was now replaced by an oncoming storm. He suddenly leaned down, slowly moving closer. His face, capable of driving the world crazy, grew larger in my eyes. His cool yet possessive breath enveloped me tightly. Our noses were almost touching. His voice was low, like a lover's whisper, yet carried deadly danger. Does Her Majesty the Empress still not feel she was wrong? My heartbeat became chaotic under his gaze. I didn't even dare breathe heavily. He stared at my lips, his eyes darkening like thick ink. He spoke slowly, word by word. You're not a child anymore. It's time to grow up. On the night of my 17th birthday, under the brilliant lights, and the resounding cheers of Long live Her Majesty the Empress, from the officials, I leaned close to my majestic husband, and whispered a single sentence that shattered the dignity he had built for over 10 years. I stood on tiptoes, my breath brushing his ear, and said in a volume only he could hear, Xiao Yun Hang, you're about to become a father. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. I saw his usually deep eyes suddenly freeze, and widen bit by bit. First there was blank shock, then disbelief, and finally overwhelming joy, that nearly drove him mad. He stood there stunned like a statue for 10 full breaths. Then, in the silent astonishment of the entire hall, the young emperor, known for his cold self-restraint, suddenly rose from the dragon throne, pointed outside, and shouted in a nearly broken voice trembling with emotion. Summon the imperial physician. Quickly summon the imperial physician. 10 months later, I gave birth to a son, as exquisite as carved jade. His loud cries filled the room. He was plump and adorable. Xiao Yun Hang held the tiny, wrinkled baby, grinning like a fool. He was extremely careful, as if holding a priceless treasure that would break at the slightest touch. What should we name him? Look at him, his eyebrows are like yours, and his nose is like mine. I leaned against the headboard, watching father and son, my heart filled with the warmth I had never felt before. He leaned down and gently kissed the baby's face, and looked deeply into my eyes. Let's call him Shen Luo Yi. Mu from admiration, Yi from Louis. His voice was filled with a tenderness I had never heard before. Time flew by. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the imperial study of Qian Qing Palace, a little boy, dressed in a miniature imperial robe of a bright yellow color, his small face always tense with seriousness, was sitting upright, meticulously reciting the To learn and practice it in time, is it not a pleasure? I was so bored I was growing mold. I couldn't resist poking his chubby cheek. Son, stop memorizing. Smile for mother. Little Xiao Luo Yi frowned, with thick brows just like his father's, glanced at me, then reluctantly forced a smile that looked worse than crying. I was extremely disappointed. Xiao Yun Hang had finished reviewing memorials at some point. He gently hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Bullying our son again? I leaned into his arms and sighed dramatically. This servant doesn't want to be empress anymore. This palace is really too boring. Every day it's either watching our son study, or watching you review memorials. When can we live like a normal husband and wife? Freely leaving the palace. Xiao Yun Hang was amused by my expression. Here we go again. Fine, fine. Since you've been well behaved lately, I approve. You can go back to your parents' home for a few days, so you'll stop nagging. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. You said it yourself, Your Majesty. A ruler never goes back on his word. I revived like a koi returned to water, and rushed out excitedly. Chuyer, quickly pack our things. We're going home. Xiao Yun Hang watched my hurried figure, and shook his head helplessly yet dotingly. What's wrong with the Empress? He asked Chuyer casually while sipping tea. Why is she in such a hurry? Chuyer replied uncertainly. Perhaps Her Majesty wants to quickly share the good news with Lord Shen and his wife. Xiao Yun Hang took a sip of tea. What good news? Chuyer blinked innocently. That Her Majesty is pregnant again, more than a month along. Doesn't Your Majesty know? The tea he had just drunk sprayed out. After a moment of dead silence, Most Honorable Emperor of Great Xiao flushed red, whether from anger or from choking on the tea, no one could tell. The next second, a furious roar shook Qian Qing Palace. Shen Luo Yi. Get back here right now. The roar pierced through the glazed tiles, startling even the sparrows outside the imperial city. I had just stepped one foot out the door when I heard it. I froze and turned around stiffly. The young emperor of Great Xiao, whose expression usually wouldn't change even if mountains collapsed, was now charging toward me in complete panic. He didn't even bother lifting his imperial robes, running 3 steps in place of 2. His face had gone deathly pale. His eyes were wide as copper bells, as if he had seen a ghost. Run? You still dare to run? Xiao Yun Hang rushed over, grabbed the back of my neck like he used to carry me as a child, and hauled me back inside. Though his movement seemed fierce, his hand was trembling violently, yet gentle enough not to hurt a single hair on my head. I shrank my neck and put on my most pitiful expression. This servant only wanted to quickly go home and share the good news with my parents. Good news? You're more than a month pregnant and still jumping around. Been planning to ride a carriage and bounce the whole way out of the palace. You call that good news? Xiao Yun Hang laughed angrily. Shen Luo Yi. You think I've lived too long? Need you to scare me 3 times a day to feel satisfied? While scolding me, he bent down, without warning, and scooped me up. Ah! What are you doing? Put me down, so many people are watching. I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck. Let them watch. I'm carrying my own empress. Who dares to say anything? The surrounding eunuchs and maids had already dropped to their knees, wishing they could bury their heads in the floor tiles. He snorted coldly, carried me into the inner chamber, gently placed me on the bed, and wrapped me tightly like a silkworm cocoon. Imperial Physician Zhang. Where is he? Get him here now. Poor Imperial Physician Zhang, the old man trembling with fear, recalled the days of his infirmary. Your Majesty, I am here, I am here. Even now, as the Vice Director of the Imperial Medical Academy, rushing in with his medicine box. After a lengthy questioning and examination, Imperial Physician Zhang wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, trembling with fear, as he reported. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Her Majesty is indeed pregnant. Her pulse is slightly weak, but her body is healthy. However, she must avoid strenuous activity for the first 3 months, and rest quietly. Did you hear that? Xiao Yun Hang glared at me fiercely, but his eyes were suspiciously red. Absolutely no strenuous activity. You were about to run, and jump just now. Physician Zhang wisely withdrew. Only the two of us remained. Xiao Yun Hang sat on the edge of the bed, looking at me wrapped like a cocoon. His chest was still heaving. He took several deep breaths, then reached out, with a slightly trembling hand, and gently placed it on my still flat belly. His voice suddenly softened, carrying a hoarse tone. We're going to have another child. I looked at him, from rage to tenderness in an instant, and my earlier nervousness melted away. I slipped my hands out of the quilt, held his hand, nodded gently. Yun Hang, you're about to become the father of 2 children. He suddenly leaned down, and buried his face in the crook of my neck. I felt a stream of warm liquid silently soaking my robe. You heartless little liar. His voice was low, and trembling with lingering fear. When you were pregnant with Mu Yi, you scared me like this too. Do you know? When Chuyer said you were pregnant and still running outside, my heart nearly stopped. I gently patted his back, just like he had comforted the 7-year-old me during thunderstorms. It's okay, it's okay. I was wrong. From now on, I'll be obedient and stay in Qian Qing Palace, clinging to you and causing trouble. Is that alright? He lifted his head. His eyes were still a little red. He gave my nose a light, fierce sniff. You dare make trouble for others again, and see what happens. Reality proved I had underestimated Xiao Yun Hang's pregnancy anxiety. When I was pregnant with Mu Yi, although he was tense, he still had to handle state affairs, and would occasionally let me sneak a couple of crab roe pastries. But this time, he truly went crazy. Wang Jin, take away these plum blossom cakes. They're too sweet. The physician said to avoid sugar. Chuyer, put away all of Her Majesty's embroidery. What if she pricks her finger and disturbs the pregnancy? And you? Xiao Yun Hang pointed at 5-year-old Xiao Mu Yi, who was waving a wooden sword. Go practice outside. Don't disturb your mother's rest. Little Mu Yi, now at the age where he was mischievous, stopped swinging his sword, and frowned just like his father. He ran over on his short legs, climbed onto the bed, and pressed his chubby face close to mine. Mother, has father been drinking the wrong medicine lately? Why won't he let me practice sword in the hall anymore? And why won't he give you the delicious water chestnut milk cakes I like? I sighed and pinched his chubby cheek. Because there's a little monster in mother's belly right now. Your father is afraid we'll disturb it. Mu Yi's eyes lit up. A little monster? The kind that breathes fire? After it comes out, can I fight it with my wooden sword? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Probably not. Mu Yi, come here. Xiao Yun Hang finished reviewing a stack of memorials, picked up his son, and held him. It's not a little monster. Your mother is carrying your little brother or sister. Mu Yi tilted her head thoughtfully, seemingly trying hard to understand the meaning of the word. Little sister, like uncle's daughter, who cries all the time, and steals my candied hawthorn. Your future little sister will be the most noble princess of Great Xiao. How could she steal your candied hawthorn? Xiao Yun Hang snorted, with bias, but his eyes were as gentle as water. She will be the sweetest, most obedient little girl in the world, with beautiful eyes just like your mother. I lay on the bed, and glared at him. What if it's a son? The dreamy look on Xiao Yun Hang's face froze. He glanced at Mu Yi picking his nose, and took a deep breath. If it's a son, I'll send him straight to the study to memorize the analects, with his big brother every day. Little Mu Yi sneezed loudly, feeling a chill run down his spine. 10 months of pregnancy felt like a lifetime. In early spring of the 12th year of Yuan He, a light spring rain washed away the biting cold of the capital. My labor came quickly, and was far more painful than with Mu Yi. The midwives came and went, carrying basins of hot water. I was in excruciating pain in the delivery room, unleashing every curse I could think of on Xiao Yunxing. Xiao Yunxing, you wretched man, it's killing me with pain. I don't want to give birth anymore. Boo hoo hoo. Let me back to the Shen family, I want to find my mother. Xiao Yun Hang stood outside the delivery room, nearly driven mad by my screams. According to Wang Jin later, that day His Majesty paced back and forth in his yellow robe, so fast he nearly wore out the floor tiles. Every time I cried out in pain, his face grew paler. In the end, he even drew the precious sword from the wall, pointed it at Physician Zhang, and roared. Why hasn't she given birth yet? If anything happens to the Empress, we will have the entire Imperial Medical Institute buried with her. Physician Zhang was so scared his eyes rolled back, and he nearly fainted. A clear, crisp cry of a newborn pierced the heavy atmosphere like dawn breaking through darkness. The midwife's joyful voice rang out, "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations. Her Majesty has given birth to a little princess. Mother and daughter are both safe." The sword in Xiao Yun Hang's hand clattered to the ground. He didn't even wait for the midwife to bring the baby out. He kicked open the delivery room door and rushed straight to the bed, carrying the chill of spring and dew on his robe. I was drenched in sweat, exhausted, barely able to open my eyes. I could only weakly feel a cold, trembling hand gently stroking my cheek. He called my name over and over by my ear. His voice choked, with suppressed sobs. I forced my eyes open, and saw the Emperor of Great Xiao kneeling by my bed, crying like a child, who had lost his most precious treasure. "Why are you crying? You're already a father. No more children, Lu Yi. We're never having any more." He gripped my hand tightly, pressing his face into my palm. "I don't need any heirs. I only need you to be safe and sound." The midwife carefully brought over the cleaned newborn. Your Majesty, look at the little princess. She's so delicate and beautiful." Only then did Xiao Yun Hang remember he had a daughter. He carefully took the tiny bundle, as if holding the world's most fragile treasure. The baby hadn't opened her eyes yet. Her cheeks were rosy. Her little mouth was moving cutely in her sleep. Xiao Yun Hang gazed at her, tears still in his eyes, but a wide smile spread across his face. He gently, almost reverently, kissed her forehead, and whispered as if issuing the most sacred decree. "Mian Yi. Her name is Xiao Mian Yi. Mian from longing and remembrance, Yi from Lu Yi." The birth of little Xiao Mian Yi completely upended the peace of Qian Qing Palace. If Xiao Yun Hang was already a wife-doting madman, he now added the title of daughter-doting madman. "Father, I've finished writing the character sheet. Please check it." 5-year-old Mu Yi respectfully offered the sheet he had practiced all afternoon. Xiao Yun Hang didn't even glance at it. He was busy dangling a rattle in front of half-year-old Mian Yi's cradle. "Just leave it there. Wang Jin, issue a decree canceling morning court tomorrow. The little princess was a bit startled last night. We wish to stay in the palace to keep her company." Mu Yi's hand holding the character sheet froze in midair. The little boy resentfully glanced at his sister blowing bubbles in the cradle, sighed, and quietly withdrew. Seems like this happened almost every day. On Mian Yi's first birthday Zhuazhou ceremony, Xiao Yun Hang piled the entire National Treasury's rare treasures in the hall. Night luminescent pearls, mutton fat jade, rare calligraphy, and paintings, even his own imperial seal. Little Mian Yi, dressed in a bright red brocade outfit, crawled around like a jade doll on the jade steps. Finally, she plopped down right in front of the imperial seal, the symbol of supreme authority, and grabbed the dragon knob with her chubby little hand. The entire court gasped. The hall fell deathly silent. A daughter of the harem touching the imperial seal was a major taboo in any dynasty. Yet Xiao Yun Hang not only didn't get angry, he clapped and laughed heartily. "Good. As expected of my imperial daughter, so bold. You like this stone? One day father will have the imperial household department carve 10 more just like it for you to play with. Your Majesty, please come back to your senses." I finally couldn't take it anymore. I stepped forward, pried the seal from her hand, and stuffed a green bean cake into her mouth instead. "Xiao Yun Hang, if you keep spoiling her like this, who will dare marry her in the future?" I glared at him. "Marry?" Xiao Yun Hang snorted coldly. The majestic aura of an emperor instantly appeared. "The precious pearl in our palm, who is worthy? At most, we will raise her for life. Any blind brat who dares have improper thoughts about her, we will break his legs first." I helplessly rubbed my forehead. I could already imagine how miserable the future son-in-law of Great Xiao would be. Time flew like an arrow. Another 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. 15-year-old Xiao Mu Yi had grown into a handsome, gentle, and refined crown prince. He inherited his father's intelligence, not his icy temperament. He was warm like a spring breeze, and highly respected in both court and common circles. 10-year-old Xiao Nian Yi, on the other hand, had grown into a complete little devil. Imperial brother, save me. A miserable scream shattered the quiet of the imperial garden. Nian Yi, in her golden princess robes, and still clutching a half-dead golden koi, dashed into the eastern palace like a gust of wind, and hid behind the crown prince, who was reading. Right behind her, Xiao Yun Hang stormed in holding a disciplinary ruler, furious. Xiao Nian Yi, come out here. The golden fish in Tay Lake was a tribute, from Tubo, an auspicious omen. How dare you catch it, and try to grill it? Nian Yi poked her head out, from behind Mu Yi, and argued boldly. Father, it glared at me first. It looked so tired swimming in the water. So I kindly wanted to warm it up a bit. You still dare talk back? Xiao Yunqing was so angry that he puffed out his beard and glared. Mu Yi helplessly put down his book, shielding his sister. Father, please calm down. Nian Yi is still young and doesn't understand. The Tubo golden fish may be precious, but it can't compare to even a strand of hair on my little sister. I'll personally pick a few nicer ones from the imperial household department later, and put them in the lake. I sat in the pavilion not far away, cracking melon seeds, and laughing until I nearly fell over. This was my life. No harem struggles, no schemes, only the young emperor, who once patted my back in the cold night, and told me not to cry. The man who covered my ears during thunderstorms, and took a poisoned arrow from me. Now, he was not only my husband, but also the father of my 2 children. Xiao Yun Hang seemed to sense my gaze. He stopped chasing his daughter, turned his head, and looked at me, through the spring scenery filling the garden. Time had been especially kind to him. The man in his early 30s had shed the sharpness of youth, and gained a mature, steady magnetism like mountains, and deep valleys. Only when he looked at me did those deep eyes remain filled, with the same tender affection, as always, never fading. He tossed the ruler aside, and walked toward me. He sat down beside me, gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. What are you smiling about? I'm smiling at you. The majestic emperor of Great Xiao can't even handle his own daughter. I peeled a melon seed, and fed it to him. He ate it, then pulled me into his arms, resting his chin on my shoulder, with a satisfied sigh. If I can't handle her, then so be it. After all, in this life, conquering you alone is enough for me. The setting sun cast long shadows of the 2 of us sitting close together on the glazed tiles. In the distance, Mu Yi was patiently teaching his troublemaking little sister. Laughter from the siblings occasionally drifted over. I thought this must be the kind of life often written about in storybooks. One lifetime, one pair of people, peaceful years together. The 6-year-old girl, who was once sent into the deep palace as a political pawn, had finally found her warmest harbor in this once cold imperial city.